everyone. Welcome back to the Viking Update Show. Happy Thanksgiving week as we all get ready to sit down and stuff our faces with some beautiful turkey and mashed potatoes or pizza or Chinese or whatever your tradition is all around as you're listening to this and getting ready for gearing up for the Vikings versus the Cardinals. 9-2, unexpected, but here we are again. As you know, when I start off the show, I'm Jon Krawczynski with The Athletic, and we are brought to you by the Aquarius Home Services Studios. We are brought to you by True Vision Institute, Twill in the Edina Galleria, Crazy Fresh, Natrium, Onyx Maps, and usually I'll kick things off only when we've ditched Jim Souhan and got him out of here. He is not here for the week, and so I'm here hosting the show, and my intrepid Vikings wingman, Alec Lewis from The Athletic, is here to join us. We'll go over a little bit of the Bears last week and that crazy game. We'll look ahead, talk a little bit of Daniel Jones. We'll talk a little bit of Justin Jefferson. We'll talk a little bit about the Cardinals and the stretch run that the Vikings have for the rest of this season. But first of all, Alec, how are things going out at Vikings headquarters these days?
Yeah, they're good. Thanks for having me, John. It's always, I always enjoy hopping on here, and I always know when I'm here that Jim Souhan is living just an extravagant life somewhere around the world and enjoying his time, hopefully with family and the people he's close with. But no, things are good. John, we're talking on Tuesday. Coordinators just talked a little bit ago. There was a lot on Justin Jefferson. There was some with Brian Flores on his defense, and then there was like 30 minutes of Matt Daniels, the special teams coordinator, talking about the watermelon kick, which is the onside that Cairo Santos deployed to make that game closer than it should have been. So yeah, wild year, 9-2. It has been something for sure, as it always is, that in a way that you know more than I do around these parts.
Alec, we'll just start with looking back at that Bears finish. You're watching this game. Actually, it seemed like things were playing out relatively catastrophe free, which is kind of unique for the Vikings going into Soldier Field. And then the whole thing blows up in the last couple of minutes there, goes into overtime. Just what are you thinking as you're processing this whole thing just turn upside down in a heartbeat?
Yeah, well, I mean, like going into that game, and you and I, we do our preview every week at The Athletic, and I think you and I both, and I really took it from you. It's like every time the Vikings go and play at Soldier Field, it's probably going to be crazy. And then I get to the stadium, the weather's beautiful, things look good. I'm like, all right, I didn't expect this. And then Aaron Jones gets the ball ripped from him on the opening possession, and you start to think, oh boy, here we go. What's going to happen? And to your point that you just mentioned, which is correct, the Vikings pretty much stabilized and recovered from that early momentum kind of dip after that fumble. And throughout the middle part of that game, the Vikings had at one point a 24-10 lead. And Kevin Seifert of ESPN kept saying to me in the press box, weird things happen at Soldier Field. Weird things happen at Soldier Field. I'm like, Kevin, you've said it 8 times. Nothing weird is really going on. And then, of course, the end of the game played out the way it did. You know, I felt throughout most of the day that Caleb Williams, when he had enough time in the pocket, he was ripping the ball over the middle. And so when the Bears cut it to 24-16 and the opportunity kind of presented itself, I was not overwhelmingly shocked to see them go down and score. And then the onside kick, I mean, you almost tune out at this point with that play, and for it to kind of result the way it did was shocking. But I really thought Sam Darnold, his toughness that he showed the entire day, but specifically in that overtime period, for him to go 6 of 6, to complete some of the throws that he did, to look as comfortable and confident as he did, that to me was my takeaway. I thought it was probably the best game that he's played all year. It has to be one of the best games he's played in his career, and to do that on the road against an NFC North opponent, that to me, regardless of the way it played out and the emotional shift, like that's a pretty impressive ordeal for him to have done what he did in that moment.
Alec, I'm going to take a little bit of a left turn in terms of looking at the end of that game and that onside kick in just the way that you're right in the change that they've made to the kickoff and to the onside kick procedure and all of those things. It has made what was a potentially exciting play just really become anticlimactic for the most part. So in a way, to see how it can go so wrong for a team and actually work out was kind of fun, because I'll actually be paying a little bit more attention to this going forward, just because I took for granted that this isn't going to work. There's no way. How can you pull this off? We have seen that is at least mathematically possible for this to work one time in a million.
There's no question. And I mean, I think to that point, John, like, I think the same way about the kickoff. When I was a kid and I was living in Alabama growing up and had no idea what I was doing, didn't know anything about the Vikings organization, I had a Devin Hester fat head on my wall because I thought the guy was just unbelievably electric as a player. And so for the rule that they implemented, the dynamic kickoff, it hasn't done much for me. But in the course of that game, I mean, both of those plays mattered. I believe it was DeAndre Carter who had the incredible return that set up for the tie. And yeah, I mean, I said I was like tuning out, but it was par for the course for, as what Kevin Seaver would say, it was weird things happen at Soldier Field. So it really was almost a collapse that I would have had to do a lot of mental gymnastics to realize what had just happened if they had lost that game.
What did Matt Daniels have to say just about that kick and about the whole procedure there that he wanted to see differently, or how he viewed that thing unfold and what went wrong?
Yeah, so the onside kick ended up hitting Johnny Munt, the Vikings tight end, and it was recovered by the Bears. And Johnny said after the game that he was attempting to block on that play, which is why he wasn't attentive to the football. Matt Daniels, the Vikings special teams coordinator, was pretty blunt, where he's like, look, in a kick like that rolls slowly, you just got to go get the ball. Like, you cannot allow it to reach 10 yards or to even I think even make it an opportunity where the ball can reach 10 yards. Like, if you are on the hands team on the front lines in that situation, you have to go get the ball at all costs. So it's a learning moment that fortunately happens amid a win. But Matt Daniels, the Vikings special teams coordinator, essentially, like, the watermelon kick is you put the ball flat on the ground and the kicker kicks the point of the ball to where it spins a certain way, but has the amount of spin to turn back. So again, I felt like I was listening to like Jim Furyk talking about a certain putt. It was kind of unbelievable how much intentionality goes in a kick like that. But I guess it makes sense for a play that obviously was almost as important as it was.
Yeah, I saw Courtney Cronin tweeted today that the Bears special teams coordinator said that they'd been working on that for like 2.5 years. And just the play, the setup, the kick, like all of that, it feels like Andy Dufresne and Shawshank just chipping away at the wall a little bit. So this is a big deal now.
Well, and I will say this. So I'll never forget last year, and the fact that I remember this is embarrassing, but it is what it is. In 2023, the Vikings and Greg Joseph tried this kick. I remember, I think it was week 2 against Philadelphia. They had, it was a brutal night, as it always tends to be in Philadelphia. And they had an opportunity late in the game, and Greg Joseph attempts the kick, and the ball was just, it was a terrible onside kick. And I remember the week after talking to a Viking staffer and them being like, we're never trying, like, he hit the ground before the ball, and it was just, it's like he duffed the onside kick, which, the Vikings moved on from their kicker last year for a lot of different reasons, but that moment definitely had to impact them. So yeah, it really, it's amazing when you pull apart even the most minute special teams plays like this, the amount of thought that some of these coaches have put behind them. It never ceases to amaze me, frankly.
We're talking with Alec Lewis from The Athletic. I'm Jon Krawczynski from The Athletic as well here on the Viking Update Show. Alec, you had a great piece that ran today, Tuesday, as we record this, about Justin Jefferson and about how he affects games without blowing up in the stat sheet. And I thought it was a good and timely piece because I even wrote in our little preview section going into the Bears game that, hey, we're wondering when is the big Justin Jefferson game coming again? Because it's been a little bit since we've seen him just completely explode. And it certainly did not come against Chicago. 2 catches for 27 yards, had the one big one in overtime that really helped. But how do you see him still tilting the field and affecting the game in a very positive way for the Vikings when he doesn't have 12 catches for 180 yards and 2 touchdowns?
Yeah, I mean, it really, if you turn on the film, and it doesn't take like an expert in film watching to identify this stuff, but you can see that almost every play over the last, I don't know, 3 weeks at least that I've watched it attentively in the Jacksonville game and the Titans game and the Chicago Bears. I mean, these teams are doing things against the Vikings, and they are structuring their defense against the Vikings in ways that they have not shown previously this year and even in past years that they are able to do from a structure standpoint, from doing certain, like Chicago. For the best example is Sunday. Jalen Johnson, their premier corner, typically just stays on one side of the field. And Matt Eberflus, their play caller, obviously their head coach, but their defensive play caller, he has not been one to travel guys, but because it was Justin Jefferson, he did that. And beyond just Jalen Johnson traveling with him, there were multiple eyes from linebackers, from safeties on Justin on seemingly every play. And when that is the case, other players, specifically Jordan Addison and TJ Hawkinson, are going to have one-on-one opportunities. And if they win the way they did Sunday, the Vikings are going to be able to move the ball pretty efficiently. To me, the question really becomes how long can defenses continue to play this way on Justin Jefferson? And how long can the Vikings go with him being satisfied that other players are succeeding before he gets so antsy to where it's like he's got to get more touches? And I think, like, to your point, there were more opportunities for him. Like, if Jalen Johnson wasn't flagged for the defensive pass interference down the field, that might have been a 40-yard catch. If there was another pick play that was flagged and called back, that might have been another 30-yard catch. So statistically, there was more there on Sunday, but I just wonder, as weeks pass, even if the Vikings are winning, how long can he go where the numbers are 3 for 38, 2 for 27 before it becomes kind of enough, or becomes like hits like a breaking point? And maybe that wouldn't come. I don't really know, but I'm kind of intrigued by that.
Yeah, I've got some thoughts on this, and we'll do that right after the break. First of all, I know that you guys are missing hearing from Jim Suhan, so he is going to tell you about 3 of our sponsors for this program: Onyx Maps, Natrium, and Crazy Fresh.
Right now, I want to let you know about OnX Hunt. Deer hunting season is here, and it's time to own your odds with OnX Hunt, the GPS hunting app trusted by millions of hunters. With the Hunt app, you'll have access to nationwide public and private land ownership information, waypoints, tracks, and much more, all at your fingertips. Go to onxmaps.com/hunt to sign up today. And thanks to Onyx Hunt for sponsoring so many shows on the network right now. We're also coming from the Aquarius Home Services. I also want to tell you about Natrium. A friend of ours, Andrea Yak, she was on the Dawn Mitchell show. She's the founder of the Minnesota Aurora, and she's involved in all kinds of things in sports and media across the town. She took my advice. She went to a Natrium and a wildflower shop the other day, and she ended up getting some of the sleep gummies that I use. We both have the same problem. Our brains race when we go to bed. You use a sleep gummy, it settles you down. I also want to say that they have so many other options. That's why I recommend going to a Natrium or a wildflower shop, because they have so many different options. Drinks, balms for your joints, balms for your guts, oils for your guts, dips, fun stuff, candies, gummies. Again, stuff for sleep, stuff for stress, stuff for fun. The variety of drinks alone is astonishing. Different flavors, different ingredients, and it's all really simple stuff. So you know it's healthy. You can read the ingredients, and there's like 3 or 4 ingredients. They're not packing the stuff with chemicals or anything else. I recommend going to an Atrium store because there are so many choices, and the sales executives are so knowledgeable, and they can point you in the right direction. I needed help first couple times I went there before I identified what I liked. So I would go there. And then once you get used to what you like, then you can always go to natrium.com and order. But for now, go try out a Natrium shop or a Wildflower shop. Highly recommend them. If you buy Crazy Fresh products, you might end up with a gold ticket. The first gold ticket winner went to the Vikings-Packers game at Lambeau. The second gold ticket has been found at Willie's Super Value in Morris, Minnesota. They're everywhere. Highly recommend trying out Crazy Fresh. And listen, the prize is a cool thing, but the reason I eat Crazy Fresh pretty much every day is because it's simple, it tastes great, and it's healthy. What a great combination. And my wife and I have started experimenting. We use the cowboy caviar salsa and the guacamole in omelets. It really spices up an omelet, makes you feel like you're at a fancy restaurant for brunch every day. And I love the fresh cut fruits and vegetables. Again, they make it so simple. Everything's one serving size. The salads make life easy. My wife has been taking those to work because she's crazy busy as a school administrator, and sometimes she has 5 minutes for lunch. She can pop the top, mix the salad, eat it, go on about her day. And you know what? She's not going to have a carb crash mid-afternoon because she's eating healthy lunches. But we highly recommend Crazy Fresh. I recommend the delivery, but if you want to go to a grocery store, that works too. Try out Crazy Fresh.
Okay, coming back here on the Viking Update Show, I'm Jon Krawczynski, talking with my athletic partner, Alec Lewis. And we were just talking before the break, Alec, about Justin Jefferson and maybe his patience for not having those big days. And will he be okay with being the guy that draws all the attention away and lets everyone else eat on the other side? I think one thing that is actually critical here is that JJ got paid. So having that contract all set for him really just does cement the financial end of things that often gets in the way when receivers, running backs, whoever it is, are not getting the touches that they think that they need to get those dollars up. So I think on the good side of things, him being taken care of on that front, there are no worries for him on that side of the things, should give him a little bit more grace to just kind of let the game come to him. That said, I do think it's so important that the Vikings better win these games when they have the low Justin Jefferson night days, because if not, it's going to be Sam Darnold, you better throw the ball to him, and then you bring into interception possibilities and all those things. And the pressure really does mount when they're just not getting it done. And all of that sacrifice that he's putting up for this team is not resulting in wins. So right now, good that they're winning, and he is financially secure, but you got to just watch that part of things, and you better make it work.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And like part of the story that I wrote is like, this guy is, and he's always been this way, and you can attest to this because he's been here even before I got here, but he has always been for the team. I mean, you can go back to him showing up for involuntary workouts when his contract was up in the air. You can go back to when he was asked about what he wanted at the quarterback position for the future, and he was both supportive of Kirk Cousins, and he was also flexible to the idea of a young quarterback. He has just, even with his contract negotiation, a lot of people externally wanted to make it this contentious thing, but it never really was. He never leaked anything, neither did his side or the Vikings, and so he's always been very team first. So again, you're exactly right. As long as you win, that's great, but the reality is he knows how much he can impact games, and he has aspirations of being a Hall of Fame player, of continuing to put the numbers up that he does. And so I think the contract is very important to mention. I think his relationship with Kevin O'Connell and how much trust they've built over time, that's also critical in this aspect. And I also think, it's going to be very interesting to see as these games progress. Like, are Jordan Addison and TJ Hockenson going to be primary targets? Can they kind of waffle it back to where Justin becomes the primary option again? I think all of that stuff down the stretch here, I think it's going to be really interesting to just watch and see how it plays out.
Well, and here's the other thing, Alec. Do you think that this approach by the Vikings offense, sprinkling it around to other places outside of Justin Jefferson, can work and produce wins when you're playing good teams, because the schedule is about to at least pick up a decent amount, right? I mean, the Cardinals, Falcons, get the Bears again at home, but then it's Seahawks, Packers, and Lions. And you know that these opponents are going to be looking at what works and what doesn't against the Vikings offense. And I would imagine that Justin Jefferson is going to continue to see just heavy amounts of attention from defense. If I'm a defensive coordinator, I'm saying, hey, we're going to lock up Justin Jefferson. And if Jordan Addison beats us, we're going to shake your hand. But we're also going to believe that my team is more equipped to absorb a Jordan Addison, a TJ Hawkinson big game than it is a Justin Jefferson just taking this thing over. So do you think that as the opponents get more difficult, that this is a winning strategy for bigger games?
I think so. And really, I mean, if I were an opposing team, it's the strategy I would take. Number one, to me, what maybe lifts it to a level of winning strategy, maybe unintuitively, is I think the run game is just so critical. You know, we want to talk about Jordan Addison winning in one-on-one coverage and TJ Hawkinson winning in one-on-one coverage. But when you are applying this many defenders to Justin Jefferson, it often leads to light boxes. And then it becomes a question, how do you beat light boxes? Well, often you do that by running the football. 2 weeks ago against the Titans, in that front with Jeffrey Simmons and Tavondre Sweat, the Vikings had a very difficult time running the ball. This past week against the Bears, they ran the ball more effectively. So it's not only can the interior of the offensive line block and can the running backs create room, but can Kevin O'Connell as a head coach stick with that as a strategy to further open up everything else? And if they do that, yeah, I do think it's going to be a winning strategy. And I'm looking forward to these teams that they've already faced that are elite, the Packers and the Lions, obviously down the stretch. What approaches do they take, and then how will the Vikings counteract them? I think all of that, to me, will dictate where this team can go in the long run. And like I've said this before, but this team in general is built so much on, like, it's like triples and home runs. It's not really singles and doubles. It's the explosive passing game offensively, and then splash plays, turnovers, sacks, defensively. Like, that's kind of how this team is built, which leads to variance. But I think sometimes that variance can go in the right direction.
Do you think that we're seeing the old Jordan Addison right now? I think that we were waiting earlier on in this season to have him show up, and what was going on with that individual matchup on a game in and game out. He just was not the same game breaker. Certainly on Sunday he was, and he's had a couple games where it's like, okay, I see this guy as a really viable number two, which is what he looked like as a rookie as well, and just wasn't there early in the season. Do you see more of that, more consistency coming on, or was this just a favorable matchup and a good game for him?
No, I see more consistency, and you wrote about him after the Colts game at US Bank Stadium. And from that point on, once you wrote about him, as it always goes with your ability to see these things on the front end, he's taken off. I mean, truly, had he not gotten injured in Tennessee and Nashville against the Titans, he might have blown up in that second half as well, just with some of the coverage structures that the Titans were facing. But I mean, you said it, this past Sunday, it was everything. It was the physicality downfield when a guy was draped all over him. It was the ball tracking. It was the yards after the catch, tight roping the sideline. I mean, it was no pre-snap penalties. He looked engaged. He looked fast. The body control was impressive. And I think as long as he's continuing to get touches the way he has these recent weeks, that's the guy I expect. And that's the guy that they're going to have. That's the guy they drafted with the first round pick. It's the guy they need to continue to move the ball offensively, regardless of how defenses are going to approach Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, and to me, Alec, there's a toughness element to him as a small receiver that seems to be so important for his game. When he asserts himself physically, even when you look at him and he's not the 6'5", 210-pound dude that's going to just jump over guys, but he has a way of bouncing off of dudes, of not letting contact bother him, and that just seems to also indicate a mental focus that is there as well that might not have been there earlier in the season.
Yeah, and he navigated the ankle injury that he suffered in week 1 against the Giants, and that may have persisted and maybe have gone a little longer than anybody, both internally and externally, would have hoped. But I go back about 6 weeks ago, probably, I sat, and maybe it was longer than that, I sat with wide receivers coach Keenan McCardell, and I told him, I was like, Jordan, I haven't gotten to know him very well, and I asked him, like, how would you just sum up this guy for those of us who maybe don't know him that well? And he's like, you guys just got to understand how confident he is in his abilities and how much he believes in what he could do. And I don't know if at the time I really understood that, but I think what Keenan was probably trying to get across there is this guy is an exceptional player and believes it wholeheartedly. And when he is healthy and he is engaged the way he has been the last few weeks, I mean, you start to, think about wingmans for elite receivers in the league, and his name is up there in that list. So it's been, this was the guy, honestly, going back to the spring, he was really, really impressive. And this was the type of player that we saw then that I think you hope to see. And obviously he had his legal situation over the summer, and that seemed to kind of spin things out a little bit. But it's been really impressive to see him do what he's done.
Let's take one more quick break here on the Viking Update Show with our special guest, Alec Lewis. I'm going to tell you a little bit about True Vision Institute in Bloomington. We're Thanksgiving week. What are we thankful for? I'm going to be corny and say I was thankful for my partnership with True Vision, because for years and years and years, glasses, contacts, all the way back to 4th grade, to have my vision correction. And finally, this summer, I bit the bullet and went into True Vision for LASIK surgery, and it's one of the best decisions I've ever made. I've told you about the people at True Vision. They just are so welcoming. They make the process so easy, so accessible, and they take you through a point-by-point examination of your eyes, ask you all questions about what you're looking for out of your vision to get you to the right vision correction option for you. Maybe it's LASIK surgery. Maybe it's another option that they can explore as well. There is a no pressure environment when you walk into True Vision, TrueVision.com. Then you go through the actual procedure with Dr. Chu, who has this very soothing, calming voice. He walks you right through it. It's over in a matter of minutes. And after a short nap, you wake up and you're seeing clearly, just like me. I cannot recommend True Vision enough. It makes your life so much more convenient, so much easier not to deal with the hassle of contacts and eyeglasses. And oh, by the way, you don't have to keep going back and spending hundreds of dollars on new glasses, trying to stay ahead of the stylish trends, trying to re-up your daily contact lenses. It's a pain in the butt. Go to TrueVision.com, set up an appointment, go in and look and see if LASIK surgery is right for you like it was right for me. I wish I would have done it 10 years ago. And now we'll hear from Jim one more time on Twill at the Edina Galleria.
We love supporting local businesses. We love working with local businesses. I started buying stuff at Twill in the Edina Galleria a long time ago. When I started this podcast network, I was really hoping I'd be able to work with Scott Dayton, the founder and owner of Twill, and I was lucky enough to be able to do so. Now my closet is pretty much all Twill stuff. I don't get free stuff. I don't get discounts. I don't ask for discounts. I go there and pay full freight because I want to support a local business. Also because the stuff is awesome. Just bought a fresh batch. I'm about to go on a vacation with my wife. Everything I'm packing is Twill stuff because it wears well. It's comfortable. It doesn't wrinkle on planes. It doesn't wrinkle in suitcases. It comes out looking good. It wears like iron, and I'm never going to have to replace it. It's just so simple. Everything from casual shoes to dressy shoes to golf stuff to dress stuff to suits By the way, you get everything tailor fit, which really helps me out. And everything from, gopher stuff to winter stuff to summer stuff. They just have everything. So go to twillmn.com, sign up for email updates. They won't send you anything unless they have a very specific event they want you to know about. They won't spam you. And go in there and say hello. Tell them we sent you. It's just a pleasant group of knowledgeable people. They are experts at what they do. It's the best men's clothing store in Minnesota. Go check out Twill online and in person in the Edina Galleria.
All right, we're back here for the final segment here on the Viking Update Show. Jon Krawczynski here with Alec Lewis. And Alec, I think one thing that I have been looking at very closely over the last couple of weeks that I start to believe is happening is that Sam Darnold is getting his mojo back. He was wobbly there kind of in the middle portion of the season, turning the ball over a little too much, making some crazy decisions. These last couple of games have been locked in. And you said it at the start of the show that this might have been his best game of the season. I think that's a pretty good sign as December comes in and as the competition is going to stiffen and playoffs are approaching. It looks like the Sam Darnold who just shot out of a cannon at the start of the season is coming back to them at the right time.
There's no question. And it's really been, you give him a lot of credit. You give the staff a lot of credit. And you give, the locker room and how they've kind of stayed alongside him. But it has taken all of that. The arm talent has never, ever, ever been a question. He makes some throws every single week, a couple, a few, whatever it may be, where you're just like, how did that happen? This past weekend, it was the Jordan Addison throw on the first play out of halftime where he layers it over two defenders right down the seam. You're like, watching it back on film, it doesn't seem like it's possible to put the ball there. But for the most part, Sunday, he was accurate. He was making the right reads. And for me, it was just the speed at which it looked like he was seeing and reacting. There was an overtime throw that was just a check down to Aaron Jones where he looked right to Jalen Naylor and quickly moved back left. And to me, the confidence, the conviction in what he was seeing, if that continues down the stretch, it's going to be very interesting to see what's possible. I'd be curious from you, what does the ceiling become, I guess, for this season, or what does your expectation become if that level of performance that we've seen the last 2 weeks persists?
Yeah, it was funny. I saw somebody put kind of the statistics side by side up and kind of like which quarterback is which, A and B, and the statistics are so similar across the board: completion percentage, touchdowns, turnovers, all of those things. And it was Sam Darnold and Jared Goff. And you look at all of the discussion about Goff and the Lions, and look, I think they are clearly the best team in the NFC, maybe the best team in the NFL, but I do think that we are all waiting, or people are looking for the shoe to drop, for Sam Darnold to kind of come back down to earth. And there were a couple of games a few games ago where you thought, oh, here we go again. Now the water is really finding its level. But if he is able to maintain what we have seen for the vast majority of the season, let's be honest, I do think that they go into the playoffs with a real belief that they could beat any team in the field. I like Philadelphia. I love Detroit, but neither one of them are unbeatable, especially if Darnold is slinging it like this. And I think, Alec, you'll know this more than me, but one of the real keys to this is how Kevin O'Connell navigated the dips in Sam Darnold's season. And you're talking about a journeyman quarterback who has been kicked to the curb a couple of times, who's probably had his confidence shaken over the years. And when he started to wobble, what did Kevin O'Connell say, both in the locker room to his teammates and to the media? This is our guy. We believe in him. He's going to be here and be the guy that's going to take us where we want to go. And I just think that you cannot undersell or oversell the importance of that approach from the head coach. This for a guy who has just been searching for the right fit, who has been labeled a bust and all these things, to have someone just be a positive force in his life and back him in the difficult times, just like he backed him in the good times, I really have to think that did a heck of a lot for Sam Darnold and for his confidence that he can kind of figure out the little things that are going wrong on the field, because he knows that his guy has his back through all of this. It's just so important.
Yeah. You mentioned, like, people have been waiting for the other shoe to drop with Sam Darnold all year. And I understand the perspective, and I also will be the first to tell you that the offensive turnovers still are a primary issue for this team and a primary concern for me in terms of where they may ultimately go. But I always kind of laughed at that because the Sam Darnold of old had his receiving core was Quincy Enunwa. His offensive line was guys who I can't name, and his head coach was Adam Gase. And so this environment, I think, to me, to say he's just going to be what he was minimizes the importance of the infrastructure. And to your what you just said, I think maybe the most important aspect of that infrastructure, and it's really emblematic of Kevin O'Connell's the job he's done here, is to lift this thing where I think the vibe and the environment just feels like it is like a place that allows guys to be as good as they can be. And that's really, to me, like the theme of this season is no matter how it finishes at this point, and I'm sure we'll ride the wave through the rest of the regular season and into the playoffs, and however whatever the result ends up being at the very end, it will probably cloud a lot of it. But I think so much of how I'll think about this season is just this coaching staff and this locker room of players squeezing everything out of the orange that was possible to be squeezed out. And that's a testament to a lot of them, because the constraints on this season in terms of the dead cap they absorb, the lack of draft picks in recent years in Kwesi Adofo-Mitz's time, and even in Rick Spielman's time, all that stuff has really affected just the overall talent level and what was probably possible. But to be 9-2 and to have done it the way they've done it, and for Sam Darnold, a $10 million quarterback, to be playing how he is, it's a testament to a lot of things and a lot of people in there, and probably nobody more than Kevin O'Connell.
I think at minimum, Alec, on your point, just kind of waiting for the other shoe or whatever, what Sam Darnold has shown this season is that he is capable of doing it in a good environment. And because of that, I think he's going to get another shot to continue starting, whether the Vikings go and win the Super Bowl this year and he stays here, or if he goes somewhere else, they lose in the playoffs and the Vikings turn to JJ McCarthy next season. I think Sam Darnold's going to get a chance to start next season somewhere. And that is something that we did not know was going to happen at the start of this year.
I agree. And I'll be interested in terms of we'll see how this season ends, but where he ends up going and the reasons behind that. Because I imagine with the environments that he began his career in New York and Carolina, and then the last two environments that he's been in San Francisco and the Vikings, and the success he's had this year specifically, I imagine it shapes his perspective that the infrastructure will be critically important to where he decides to sign, and what that looks like ultimately from a monetary perspective, and what he might be willing to give up to sign in a place that gives him the best chance long term. That to me, I really, as I think about him and how he thinks about this stuff, I would expect him to choose the premium opportunity in terms of the people around him over just the price tag in the end. And that's from talking to people around him, and from understanding it and realizing how much he appreciates just the importance of good coaching and skilled players and an offensive line that holds up for enough time.
Yeah, all he's got to do is go find one of the best head coaches in the league and the best receiver in the league at another spot. He'll be in great shape. So
yeah, highly recommend that if you could do it. Yeah, it's and that's, as I talk about that, I kind of laugh because I often, the more I cover this league, the more I'm like, how many good environments actually are there?
Yeah,
it's a interesting question.
Lastly, real quick, Alec. What's anything on Daniel Jones? What is your read? Is there real interest from the Vikings in bringing in a guy to be a backup, or do you think they just ride things out as is?
Yeah, I think there is interest. I mean, we're talking on Tuesday afternoon. I have not heard anything more today. Kevin O'Connell talked Monday, and he definitely did not rule out the idea that he was interested. But Daniel Jones is going to have a lot of options. He's going to sign probably for a minimum amount this year, and he's another guy, just like Sam Darnold, who I'm sure wants to be in an environment that will allow him to settle, to learn, just to feel like you're in a productive place throughout the rest of this year. But for the Vikings, there's a lot of reasons why this makes sense for the long term. Both if he were to sign here and then leave, you might get a comp pick. If he were to sign here, you get to know him a little bit, and potentially if Sam Darnold leaves, then he's your quarterback that you can pair with J.J. McCarthy next year. And then there's reason that it doesn't make sense. I mean, Sam Darnold, we've just talked about, is playing probably as good as he's played throughout his career. Does it affect the chemistry if you bring in a guy like Daniel Jones at this point to a quarterback room that's has a lot of great relationships? It's going to be interesting to see. Again, I think he has a lot of options, and he'll probably pick the one that's best for him. And if it's Minnesota, I wouldn't be absolutely shocked. No.
Alec Lewis, one of the best in the business. Appreciate you taking a little time this week, and happy Thanksgiving to you and yours. And we will see you on Sunday for the Arizona Cardinals.
Sounds good. Big Wolves week, John. You gotta.
Oh, man.
They gotta turn the tide. I mean, holy cow,
man. We got a lot. That's 2 or 4 more other podcasts to get into, but we'll work on that. But thanks again to Alec Lewis for joining us, for Davide Rosso for being the producer of this show. And again, thanks to our sponsors, Aquarius Home Services, True Vision Institute, Twill at the Edina Galleria, Crazy Fresh, Natrium, and Onyx Maps. And we will talk to you next week.